Today we are going to be reviewing the parts of a sewing machine. For this demonstration we're going to use the Husqevarna Viking Model 400. So to start with, we've got our cover to keep dust off. We'll remove that. And then we've got our door that opens up. Then next we're going to look at our thread take-up. Lever, and so you can see that that's moving in there. It brings the thread up and down to be able to help create the tension for the stitch. Next we're going to look over here. We've got a thread guide for bobbin winding right here. And then next we've got our light, which is an obvious one. We've got our presser foot lever that lowers and raises our presser foot, which then takes us to the presser foot that holds your fabric in place. I just think of a foot stamping down on your fabric so that you can think of a presser foot. Next we've got our bobbin cover, and so that comes off so that you've got the bobbin. We need a top thread to make a stitch and a bottom thread. So both of those work together and interlace with each other so that you can create a stitch that holds the fabric together. Next, we've got our bobbin, and we've got our free arm. Then from there, let's go ahead and look at the feed dogs. Right here, we've got little teeth, and so I think of them as little dogs going ruff, 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 and they're going to move the fabric through at an even pace so that you've got an even stitch. So you bring down that presser foot onto the feed dogs, and you've got the fabric in between the two, and then your needle's going to go down and back up. Now you'll notice on this hand wheel that I'm always turning it towards me. Keep that in mind. That's an important thing. Next, we're going to look over here at our needle plate. So once again, we'll lift this, and the feed dogs are found in the needle plate. It's that little metal part that is going to allow the needle to go through down to catch the bobbin thread and come back up. Then we've got our needle plate that has measuring marks on it so that you can do an even seam allowance. Up here we've got our needle, and then we've got a needle screw that allows us to change out needles if you want a different size needle, or if you break a needle then you can replace it. So that's right there. Now we'll go ahead and go over to the needle bar with the needle clamp. That's right here. That's going to hold the needle. Now we're about halfway through our list. You're doing great at concentrating. Up here we've got our thread tension dial, and you can adjust that. Usually I keep it right in the middle, but if you've got different thicknesses of fabric, then it helps you to be able to adjust how hard the presser foot's pushing down on your fabric. And then over here we've got our spool pin. That's the little part that we put our spool onto, a spool of thread. And then because this one's sideways, you need a spool cover to hold it in place. There's two sizes of this, and the smaller one is when you've got a smaller spool of thread, and the larger one's for when you have a larger one. Then over here we've got our quick info guide, and then our bobbin spindle and our bobbin stop. When you're winding a bobbin, which is this again, bobbin, then you're going to move this down. Oh, I need a bobbin on there to make it work. And it's not going to work. We'll just move on since that's not working. So then we've got our screen display. It tells us what type of presser foot to use and the stitch size. It tells us which stitch we're using, number 1, and the length of the stitch and the width of the stitch. Then we've got our function panel right here with the different function buttons, and then you can do reverse stitch. You've got your stitch lengthener and shortener. You've got a stop and reverse when you're using the decorative stitches. You've got a width on your zigzag, and then you've got your different function and memory and clear for when you're doing the additional programming. Then down here we've got our choices of stitches. So we've got our stitch panel right here. And then we have a thread cutter right here that's used for when you're winding the bobbin. Then you can have a thread cutter right there. There's also a thread cutter right at the back for you to be able to use when you are sewing your stitches and you're done. You can use that thread cutter, or you can also just use a little pair of scissors. Thank you so much for joining us for this demonstration on the different parts of a sewing machine.